All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I made mention at the beginning that my one job today is to make sure that we're staying on time. So we're doing pretty good considering there are 3 stalls or 4 stalls in the ladies' room. So as people are filing in, I have to add a little bit of humor and give Lindsay Martin a little bit of credit here. So I'm a little concerned about Lindsay's self-esteem right now. So she led the boot camp in here and it was very serious, and Lindsay's a really funny person. And so it was really difficult, I'm sure, for her to listen to the laughter in the other room, thinking like, what am I doing wrong? So I don't think she's paying attention, which is good. So if you guys could do me a favor and like give her some courtesy laughs and stuff so that we can kind of build her up. So she's an important member of our team. So anyways, this section, honestly, for you guys as doers and users of the system, this section in particular, I expect to be something that, you know, you're shaking your pen because you need more ink to come out faster. This is the hot topics section. And so this is where you'll have lots of little tidbits and takeaways and ways to maximize your usage of the system. So who better than to lead this section for hot topics than Lindsay Martin and also Mike Blink. So I'll welcome them back up to the front. And this is about an hour section. We might cut it about 5 minutes short since we ran a little behind strategically because of the ladies' room. With that being said, they'll invite Lindsay back and remember what we talked about.
If I actually listened to any of my husband's dad jokes, I would have one, but I usually just start rolling my eyes as soon as he gets started leading into one. So I don't have anything yet. Go ahead. You want me to do it?
No, yeah, go ahead.
All right, so if you were over here earlier, we were talking about self-service life events, and I talked about how we are going to touch on that. So, self-service life event, that means your employees can go in and do a life event that pertains to their personal life on their own without having to come to you, and they can enroll in benefits. So if you would like that option for your groups, then definitely pay attention. We got some exciting information on it, and then you can talk to your CSM about. So what life events can be done via self-service? Anything related to the employee and their personal life, nothing with their employment. So they can't change their salary, can't change their job class, but hey, they have a baby. They can log in and they can add that baby. They can add the baby to the benefits. They have a dependent that needs to come on or needs to come off, a spouse, maybe a spouse change employment status, anything related to that. Maybe they got married, maybe they got divorced. So they can do anything that's related to them. They can log in, select the life event, complete the whole process, and they can get it taken care of. So how does the employee start a life event? Well, first of all, we have to turn it on for you. So you have to let us know that that's something that you're interested in doing and we can turn it on. If you were over here before, when the employee logs in outside of an enrollment window, we talked about how they can access the forms library. They possibly could change their address, their beneficiary information. So along that sidebar as well, it says, I have a qualifying life event that I'd like to complete. So it adds that in there for them to do. Biggest question, do I get to approve them? Yes, all self-service life events go into follow-up for you to review to make sure that it's a valid life event, that they didn't get married to their boyfriend that you just met last week and you know that they're not actually married, that they're not adding every kid in the neighborhood to their medical plan. So you can review it and it'll tell you exactly what was done, when it was done, what the event was, and you can decide, yep, we're gonna approve that, or maybe we want some additional information, or maybe we have some questions on it. Does the employee have to, oh, yes, ma'am. That's my next bullet point. Does the employee have to provide documentation? There is an option that you can ask the employee to provide documentation that is specific to that life event. So you say, yeah, we want to turn this on, that if they have it, we're going to have them upload it. But then you're going to tell us, well, if they get married, what does your employer accept as a document that they can load to the system? Marriage certificate, utility bill. You can have us tell exactly, we can cater exactly to your case, exactly to your employees, what specific forms they would be allowed to load. Employee can load those. They'll have an option when they go in. We'll walk through it and show you kind of what it looks like. It's a very easy process. The instructions are very easy. It's just something that, again, we turn on. So do they have to provide it? The employee can complete the enrollment even if they don't provide it, but it goes into a follow-up and into a pending that documentation is loaded. So whether they load it, whether they provide it to you and you load it, or however that may be done. Does that answer your question? Okay.
And there's another slide on it. I'm gonna run to the back. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, we can. We certainly can. That's Mike Steele, one of his favorite things to do. I was just seeing if you were paying attention.
Do we have to turn it on? Yes. So if you want to do the self-service life events, obviously you have to allow your employees to log into the system now as it is, like during open enrollment. But then additionally, we can set that up as well. What plans can employees edit? So they can only touch plans that are specific to that life event. So if you tell us, hey, if they have a baby, they can do medical, dental, vision. I don't know what else. That maybe like an accident plan. Maybe they want to buy child life insurance now, then they can do that. If they have a baby, maybe that doesn't qualify them to enroll in a policy that they had because it doesn't even apply to the baby or a situation or whatever. So it's going to control, just like when you would do a life event and it gives you a list of plans that you can check off that they can enroll in, it's going to do the same thing for them.
One thing I'm going to add to that is if we're setting it up and we talked about what plans can an employee change. If you want your case set up to where an employee can only change coverage tiers and not benefit plans during specific life events, make sure you let us know that as well, because that is a setting that we could turn on where employees can only change coverage tiers, not plans. But that's a good question for your medical broker. Would a gender change be a qualifying life event? And that for probably better ask for with your medical broker on that. Any other questions on self-service life events? Just this piece here. I know we have a mixed bag in the room of groups doing it and groups that don't do it. So if you don't mind, those that are doing self-service life events, can you raise your hand? Perfect. We got a good mix across the room. So as we're going to transition to lunch in a little bit, if you have questions for those that are currently doing self-service life events, you saw them raise their hands, don't be shy, reach out to them, ask them a question on it. This is something that does take some time to get used to. I know as HR people, you have full control over the life event when you're doing every single one of them. But then at the same token, sometimes we hear the same after that sentence, I'm looking to take some stuff off of my plate. And this might be that way that can help take some stuff off of your plate, but still give you that final say if that life event goes through with the follow-up queue.
And another thing that I'll add, I believe, for some of you guys that have self-service life events, I believe we have an instruction form in the forms library, so you can reference the employee to the forms library, and it gives them step-by-step what they need to do. And that way they can have that information as well, and it can tell them, hey, click here, enter the information here. Your dependent, you can even add a note that says the dependent docs are required. It won't be approved until then, et cetera. So we can provide them instructions and allow them to do it. And that will definitely save a lot of time for you guys. And it puts it back on them where they can add that dependent instead of waiting until the baby's 31 days old and then saying, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. Now I'm getting all these claims coming in and I need to put them on my medical insurance. So.
Leading a session on advanced life events, and there will be people in that session that are currently doing them, and a lot of you who are not currently doing self-service life events. So if you've got questions, that is a time that we'll be getting more in depth into the actual process and talking about that further.
And that is going to be upstairs in the other room upstairs. So if you signed up after hearing this tidbit and you want to learn more, Lindsay and I are going to do the basic life events later this afternoon. But if you want to hear more about that and you want to switch classes, I won't be offended because this is very exciting for me. I love self-service life events.
Okay, Chris, this arrow.
Before you guys move on from that, can I add one piece of maybe consulting where we're not, so often we ask you, what do you want to do? But if maybe you're sitting in the crowd and you're thinking, what should I do? I can tell you just from my general experience that companies with 700 or more employees really benefit from self-serve life events because just the greater volume of life events that you see. If you've got 700 or less, then you've got to ask yourself the culture question because you probably have a high impact with just how you're talking to each of those people as they have those life events. And so it's really, is your culture more of like we want to ask the employee to do something themselves? Or is it when the employee has that key moment in their life, we want to be really hands-on with them and making sure we have their need. And so that's kind of how I would go about assessing that as you think about what might be right for you.
I'm going to add one more thing to that. I would say it could also be a process where maybe you are new to the system and your employees are new to the system. And maybe you want to wait until they go through an open enrollment and see the system. And then maybe next year you want to turn it on. We have other groups that come on new that their previous system they were using, the employees were already doing self-service life events. So it's nothing new to them. It's just, it looks a little bit different on the outside. So they just want to continue in that same direction that they were going. Any final questions on that? So leading into life events, once they're completed, what happens to them? Where are they? Where do they go? And how do I approve them? So on the front page, when you log in, we have the follow-up queue. So what goes into the follow-up queue? There's a few things that go in there. One big thing that goes in there that a lot of you guys take advantage of is if an employee has never had an HSA account with you before and they sign up for one during open enrollment or as a new hire, a lot of you have where we put that into the follow-up queue for you until they open their account. That way you have somewhere to put the money. A few years ago started deducting all this money beginning in January and it's May and they don't even have an account set up yet. And you have no idea where to put this money and it becomes sort of a mess for you guys. So HSA, new coverages go into follow-up until they give you an account number and then you can approve it. Also your self-service life events go into follow-up so you can review them. So let's take a look at the follow-up queue so you guys can see what it looks like. So if you have follow-ups here, you can click on it and it's going to list. It's going to list the employee. It's going to say what plans are in follow-up. That way you can take a look at it. So first one we have here is for the HSA account. New employee, new HSA. You can go in, take a look at it. They have everything they need. Then you can submit that. Here's the biggest thing that you guys got to take a look at. If it has taken the employee longer to get you the information and they have an 8/1 effective date and it's 7/22 and you know that the payroll date has already passed or payroll is tomorrow, then you're going to have to take a look at that and change the effective date. That way it picks up on a payroll file. If you have it as an 8/1 effective date, payroll's getting ready to run tomorrow, the report already ran and it was delivered to you on Wednesday and it says that they should have a 7/23 deduction date. You are never going to get that information to give to payroll because it's in the past. So if it's, you may have to look at what you're approving and you may have to make some adjustments to it. So not only are you maybe looking at the life event to make sure that it has all the documentation that you're looking for, that it's an actual life event, but you may need to closely monitor the effective date and the pay date so that way deductions start for that. Does that make sense to everybody? So Blink's gonna grab the microphone and say something for us.
How do you set up the HSA to go into the follow-up status?
Let your CSM know and we will take care of it for you. So Blink, if you want to go ahead and just show us what it looks like, just the approval process. So basically, it's just going to reprocess their confirmation statement that you've approved it. So you're basically just signing off, checking off that you're going to allow that to start. So self-service life events, those go into follow-up. So if you click on an employee, it's going to tell us what the life event was, what plans they chose to edit, and anything else that's going on. So this one you can see is they had a life event. They chose to enroll in the medical and dental, but it's asking for your approval, but it's also telling you that it is still pending that dependent documentation, which we'll go over shortly and show you guys how to do. So it's telling you that, hey, they still need this. So whether or not you choose to go ahead and approve it and maybe just keep in touch with them and allow them to get it to you later on, you know, that's up to you what you guys choose to do. I know there's been some discussions that with everything going on that birth certificates maybe are taking a little longer, marriage licenses are taking a little longer, to where we want to go ahead and get this coverage in effect, but we just may not have the documentation. So as the HR user, you are able to go ahead and approve that, and then we can go back and upload that later. But it tells you whether or not it is there, if it exists or not. So you can see here, it's telling you exactly what the life event was, what's going on, and you can choose to approve the coverage or not approve the coverage. Any questions about that? Yes, ma'am. Not to my knowledge at this time. The question was, is if it's still pending dependent documentation and you approve it, is there anything that comes around in the activity report that tells you that that dependent document is still missing? Yeah, I would say put it in your notes for sure. Ruthie, would anything tell you that something was approved without the dependent document actually being loaded? Okay. A couple other things about follow-up that I just want to touch on real quickly. So some things that don't go into follow-up on name changes, phone number changes, address changes, if they change their beneficiary information, that stuff does not go into follow-up for you to review. That would be shown on an activity report. The reason for that, it's not an event. Changing their name does not change their eligibility and allow them to enroll or unenroll in certain benefits or make them pay a new rate because they changed their address or anything like that. So there's no event that's triggering it to go into follow-up for you. So sometimes we use the activity report side by side, so that way you can see, okay, we had these life events that happened, and we also had an address change, a phone number change, and I need to do that because I need to update payroll to match what that says. Does that make sense?
Lindsay, I know you referred to this earlier, but what if I want changes to happen in payroll and not have employees be able to update demographic information in bin select?
Yeah, if you're having a lot of changes going on in the system, but they're not telling you that those changes are happening, or it's becoming too much for you to handle, we can disable the employee's ability to change their name, address, phone number in the system, and we can add verbiage for them that says, if you need to make updates, please reach out to your HR person or your whoever you want them to reach out to. Then they can reach out to you, and then you can update it in both places, and you know that those two things match. Yeah, for the whole group. Yep. So it would be if we turn that on, like nobody can change their name. As an HR user you can, but the employee could not log in and make any changes. Any other questions about the follow-up queue? So just one more thing on that. The only other thing, so like if it's an employer related life event, if you went in and did the life event and put them in a new job class and enrolled them in benefits, it's not going to put that in follow-up because you just approved it when you signed off when you did it the first time. So anything that you're going to do, it's not going to put that in follow-up, make you do an additional step on that. Wes, did you have something to add?
Just one footnote as it relates to address changes. If there are groups in the crowd that have census files running where we do have an integration with your payroll, that can be automated. And I know that that's something that every group in the room is interested in, is automating changes with their payroll. So I'm going to leave that there for a second, but just that is one exception to having dual system entry, is if you do have data exchanging between payroll and your benefits system.
All right, let's talk about dependent docs. So this again is something, it is separate from the self-service life events, but this is something that we can turn on. And there's several different layers that we can do. So we can turn on dependent docs, but let's say you have 1,000 employees and we just turned it on this year. Well, do you want it to be that every single one of those employees now has to load documentation for all of their dependents during open enrollment? Probably not. You probably have already verified that their dependents are from years past. So we have the ability to say, hey, let's upload these documents if it's new. What does new mean? New means a couple different things. If it is a new dependent, then it will ask them for the coverage, or if it is a new line of coverage that is going to be covering dependents. So there's a couple different things there. So we can filter that and change that to make it, well, we're not going to worry about somebody that's been working here for 20 years, asking them to give us all their kids' stuff. But as a new hire, we want to start tracking this more and making sure that people aren't just adding whoever to our benefits because it's increasing our costs. So we can cater that to fit your needs. We can also make it to where, do you want to be allowed as an HR user to go ahead and approve without the document being there? Or do you want to make it that nobody can approve anything until that document is there, whether I am an HR user or whether or not I am an employee, that coverage is not getting approved until the document exists in the system. And that's something else that you can do. If you want to leave that as where you are able to go ahead and bypass that, because in certain situations you may need to, then we can set that up for you as well. We can also cater exactly what documents that you will accept. So they'll load their document and they will label it as, they'll have a drop down of list of things that they can load. So birth certificate wouldn't be an option for a marriage because it doesn't apply. Now, if they're adding a dependent because they got married, then that would also be required there. So every different life event, we can filter what are acceptable documents that you guys like to see. What is your policy? We can definitely set that up for that. Blink, do you want to take us through the process? Do you have a microphone back there?
I apologize for this being weird, but talking in the back. But dependent documentation, this is a new hire that's going through our enrollment process in the system where dependent documentation is necessary for this employee to add a spouse. As you can see here, the employee experience is still the same where they add the name, last name, date of birth, social of the spouse. But what we have done is made this case require that they have to upload their marriage certificate as a qualifying document that's approved by you guys to add a spouse to the plan. That employee will select what documentation it is, choose upload from computer, simply go to their computer, and we have test dependent documentation. Click open. Gives them another opportunity to list what that documentation is. Click OK. and it is loaded to that. Now it's tied to that spouse record in the system. So if you remember when we were talking about the follow-up queue where it had that dependent doc verification message there in the follow-up queue, by uploading this document that's tied to this dependent, you don't have that message that's in that follow-up queue next to that employee that did that life event. There is an option to take a picture from a cell phone if people do need to do that. What that will do is it'll trigger a download of an app that will tie them back to that employee record as well. They would simply just click save, and from there, that dependent record is updated with that dependent documentation.
Another thing that I'll add to that is that you can upload dependent documentation at any time, the employee or an HR user can. So if you go ahead and approve it because you need to get them on the coverage, you can go to the employee's record, click enroll, go to their dependents tab, click the pencil to edit that dependent, and you'd be able to load that document in there. Any questions? Another thing that at this time, dependent documentation is a blanket setting that's across every single plan that's on the system. But I'm hoping that Ruthie may have some information for us later that maybe we'll be able to control that more on a plan setting to where if they enroll in medical, they may have to upload a document. But if they enroll in dental, maybe your dental carrier doesn't need that. Or maybe, I don't know, the accident plan, a child life plan, maybe they're not all required across all plans. Oh, you're done in the back. Okay. Anything you want to add on dependent docs?
I think you said it before, but dependent documentation, we get asked all the time, what dependent doc should we use? I don't know. That's really up to you guys to set the standard of what dependent documentation is needed for you guys to approve that coverage. We've seen a lot of accounts recently, this past summer, move into dependent audits where they're using outside resources then to do their dependent audits. If you're already taking advantage of this, some of your employees already have given you that documentation, which speeds up your process a lot. So just kind of take a look at the system. If they have those documents there, it makes your life a lot easier for that. Any other thing? Questions? This is usually the most asked question that I've seen in the last 2 years. So I was hoping for a lot of questions here. Go ahead.
Can you guys repeat the question?
The question is, isn't it standard practice basically to already require dependents to turn in these documentations? And I'm going to say every group's different.
I can help with that one. So I would say over the course of my career, I've seen maybe 15 or so groups that have done dependent audits where they audit and say, are my dependents eligible to be on the plan? And during that time, I would say an average of 5 to 7%, 5 to 8% of dependents that are on your plan are probably not eligible to be on your plan. If your broker, your health insurance broker will tell you, if they're children that aren't high claimants and you're self-funded, it may not have a big impact to you. But if you've got high cost ex-spouses on your plan, it could be really costing you. And so if you do that dependent audit, it is an intrusive process, but it does potentially help you get some of those folks off your plan. If you want to do something that's a little less obtrusive, but still do something, one thing that you could consider doing would be to ask your employees a attestation or even fraud statement question in advance of their medical enrollment of, hey, did you know that you're committing fraud if you have dependents that aren't eligible to be on our health plan and they're on there? By certifying that that you click I accept, you're attesting that all the dependents that you're covering on the plan are eligible to be on there. So you're not necessarily going through the process of making them prove it, but you are letting them know, hey, this is a problem.
And to that point, we've seen that a lot, you know. First step was the spousal carve out question, right? We've seen that become very popular, and that's kind of been around for a while. Wes mentioned that attestation statement. I've seen more and more of those coming where you're making your employees attest that they understand there are rules to the plans. If you don't follow these rules, you may be held liable for back claims. So thank you, Wes. That was a great point there. The last bullet point on this one is where you can view those documents. Not everyone was in the room for that, but there's that new communications tab that's in the system now. Underneath uploaded documents is your place to find those forms that employees have uploaded, okay? Right next to Lindsay's favorite thing, the notes area. So write some notes in there as well. Any other questions? That was a good question. Now this used to be my project every year, 1095Cs. I've spent a lot of time with many of you going back and forth after the new year on updates for ACA forms, updates for the process that we go through for this. 1095C delivery has been upgraded throughout the years, where we have some custom field capabilities that we've seen earlier, where we can add custom questions to your case, and we can ask your employees, do you want to receive your 1095C form electronically? And they get to answer yes or no. Obviously, there's some more language that's in there for that, so they understand what the form's for. But what that does is it gives them the option to opt in or opt out on that electronic forms delivery. Going through with a lot of our newer groups, you're going to see that we're going to talk about that very early in the project. Okay, we're going to make sure that we get that question on your form early and often to your new hires and your existing employees throughout open enrollment. Can I print those forms that only said no? Yes. So that's a big time savings for all of you that get stuck with the mailing piece of this, right? We're able then to provide you guys with a list of the forms that just of those employees that said no. Helps save time. My favorite thing, helps saves trees. We're not printing as much, and it saves a lot of time with stuffing those envelopes. At the same token, we're still going to give you that whole set of forms though for you to have on file. That's very important for you guys to keep just in case people need that in the future. Where employees can find these forms. You've heard this a couple times today, so I hope it's catching on. The forms library is your best friend. It really is. Forms library, once you get your employees used to going there to see plan documents, to see where they can get their 1095C forms, to get those other claim forms, that is going to be your best friend. But that is where the employees can find that form. Want to answer? No? No? Questions on this? This is where I was hoping to get a lot of back and forth. Yes.
I will give my educated answer on this. The space that allows that's set up in the system right now, it's a smaller space than what the icon like for your company logo is. Is that correct, Ruthie? So it would be a matter of creating a larger space in order to house that, because we got it as big as it can be right now. So I would say definitely we can put in a request with Solarix to maybe open that up a little bit, for sure.
Lindsay, can we link to the forms library from just external links, like with the hyperlink?
Yes.
So on a one-off request basis, if you want, one thing that we could do would be to add something to your homepage, like the welcome page, with a link there that looks different.
Yeah.
I'll also add that we have, when you guys go through open enrollment every single year, medical is something that the employee always has to go into and either enroll in or decline coverage. So it will actually refresh those answers on a year-to-year basis for them. So if they answered no one year, they have the opportunity to say yes next year, because if they go through enrollment, that question is going to pop up and say, hey, how do you want to receive this? So that's another thing that hopefully over the years, we won't have any no's, right?
I'm hoping so. So no more no's. Any other questions? And it could be anything on ACA. I'm going to actually open up that door a little bit. Hopefully moving forward these next couple of years, you know, the process, you guys are used to it. And going through that review process, if you remember, we're going to send you that summary that's in Excel. It's step one for you guys to review. Please make sure you review those that are on the warnings tab and let us know who we need to update. And from there, we work with you along the step of the way, file with the IRS, get back the errors. I wish I could tell you exactly what the error was, but it does not tell us that it's the date of birth for this one child, right? I can get you down to the employee level of where that error is coming from, and we have to just ask that employee for that time for reviewing their own record, making those updates. We make those updates, we refile with the IRS, and we kind of start that circle cycle of refile, fix, file, and fix. But most of you guys do such a wonderful job of being so timely and responding with that it makes our job a lot easier on our end to make this work a lot better and smoother. We're getting all better. We all do wish that it went away, but we're all doing a good job working together of making sure we get this done timely. Questions?
I'm going to lead this. We still have time, Katie, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to lead this into some additional ACA conversations with you guys, just because on the back end, just some things that we see, and just how using the system correctly is going to be less and less warnings that you're going to see on those reports that Mike's asking you to review. Specifically, when you're doing life events and you're processing them correctly, and everything that you do in the system for every single employee, it saves it, and all of that information is used later. So whether it be for your ACA coverage, whether it be for your reporting that you need to send out, anything that you're doing, if you're using the system correctly, it's definitely going to help with the ACA. A lot of times we see where, I don't even know a good example. If life events aren't done correctly, or people are given coverages outside of their new hire window, or they're given it too early or too late, then you have where the coding that's going to come across where an offer of coverage should have been made or an offer of coverage was made, and whether or not they had coverage, those two codes don't go together per what the IRS's opinion on is it, and that's going to go ahead and send back to you and tell you, hey, we got to take a look at this. And what that usually requires is us going in and seeing, okay, like what happened with this employee? How can we fix that? How can we fix it so the IRS will accept what we want to send over for it? Does that make sense?
Perfect. Katie, you had something? All right. There was a conversation earlier that we had on our last breakout session that there's people that missed over there. It was a little bit around reporting and what report is the best report. And we were going round and round about some things. So I just want to bring that full circle back. I know some of you are hearing this for the second time, but I think it might drive some more questions from you all, because Hot Topics is really about what you guys want us to hear, what you guys want to see, what the trends we're going through, and us talking about what we're commonly seeing. But it was brought up last time of what report do I use to see common things that are happening? Lindsay mentioned it earlier, activity report, right? We're setting up that activity report for you guys to run at least once a week to remind you guys of the actions that are happening in the system. Please make sure you're reviewing that report. I used to tell everyone, you're not hurting my feelings, because I don't know if you open it or not, but at least we're running it and giving it to you to provide you guys that option to review those reports and see all those changes. Second, we're getting into renewal time, right? Where your broker might be asking you for census information, How do I run a report for that? Lindsay's favorite report, my favorite report, census report. But we also got that question of how do we just find out who has coverage on a specific plan? That report is what we like to call the payer report. During that conversation that we had back and forth earlier, I talked about there's a drop-down option for payer. That means what carrier you're trying to use, right? What report are you trying to run it for? Is it just for the medical plan? Is it dental or vision? So you have those options as well to narrow down into that. Other favorite report is, and this is going to shock a lot of people, is the benefit summary report. This is a new report that I discovered just the other day. When I was asked to give a big file for a broker that's going out and shopping every line of coverage, I was like, oh man, that's a lot of information that's needed. Yes, we have it, but they needed it in a specific format where, you had names, dates of birth, what job class were they in, what location are they at, what the employer and employer cost was. And I'm sitting here thinking, by golly, that's a lot of VLOOKUPs if I got to put this all together for them in a specific format. Luckily, I was playing around and I found the benefit summary report. On that report, you can run it for all employees, all job classes, all locations, and it's a straight line across of what the employee has across all benefits. So that's a new one for me. When you get back to your offices later today and you ask your CSMs in an email, what was that report that might ask? I'll make sure they know exactly how to run that report later this week so they can help you guys out, okay?
Instead of waiting and discovering it on your own, you could always ask your CSM, we could help you out. That way you're not finding it just the other day.
Hey, I was just trying. I was trying to help out.
Like, oh, is this a new report I've never heard of? Oh, nope, definitely heard of that one before.
That's definitely it.
If you're racking your brain for reporting and you need something or you need something specific or you need help, then reach out to your CSM because if you need it, somebody else has needed it. So it's definitely out there.
We're getting kind of deep into reporting now. I know this wasn't the direction I was supposed to go, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Probably the last time I'm going to get this mic at this event. So this is good.
Good job.
I know. I'm taking it. Self-bill reporting. Self-bill reporting is always something that I've enjoyed helping you guys out with. Self-bill reporting makes your lives easier. Reason for that is you're telling the carriers what you're paying them, right? Not the carriers giving you a list bill and you got to go through that. But when you're going through a lot of that information and you send it into the carrier and the carrier's like, I need a little bit more information on that report, please let us know. Christine and I are working hard on the back end, making sure we can get some date ranges in there. Our team will help out with those account numbers that need to be added to that. But I'm going to dive in a little bit. If you have multiple pay periods, right, with school districts, especially where you have a 24 deduct group and an 18 deduct group, and you don't pay that bill for them in the summertime, make sure your CSM team knows that if you're not doing a true monthly bill year round, because you're able then to get two separate reports where in the summertime, you don't get the report for the 18 deduct folk because they're not having those payroll dates in the system. So just something to think about. I probably shouldn't have had a hot mic for a free minute there, but that was my one spiel on self-bill reporting that I wanted to get out for everyone, just to know that, it does save your lives. It saves some time, it gives you some freedom, but at the same token, just spending a few extra 5-10 minutes on the setup of those and making sure you're working with your CSM to get those set up correctly truly makes your lives better because the carriers are getting the information of what they need. Questions?
So at this point, I'd like to reflect a little bit on the last session. So Mike and Lindsay were up in the front last session. For those of you that were laughing hysterically over there and making us feel bad, we were asking good questions about work over here. So that being said, I want to really encourage you to ask your questions. Honestly, I had to cut them off. They were asking so many questions because we know that this is the time for you to ask, and communicate the things that are making you say, when you're sitting at your desk. So
With that being said, who is the first person that's going to ask that lingering question? Are you guys starving? Lindsay, you bored him to death.
I know.
Okay, awesome. Heather first.
You said that the ACA delivery question would repopulate every year during open enrollment. Can that be removed for the people that already said yes, they want to get it electronically, and only populate for the people that said no before? So that it doesn't ask that and we don't flip the coin on someone?
I don't see why not. Yeah.
So that way you're really targeting those people. Let's get them to move to yes. So, again, saves trees. Yep.
Bill pay, and that we, of course, we're new, so I'm getting started again. We get a bill that comes in from a medical. They tell us that our admin bills have to be paid with what they say, even though we disagree with what's on there, because it will be corrected on the next bill. So if they don't generate with what we have in the system, will that cause a problem?
I'll talk to you about that
Okay,
later. That's medical billing is kind of not a self-bill. Self-bill, I should have clarified that. I apologize. Your voluntary plans, basic life, LTD, Vol Life, Aflac, Allstate, MetLife, those accident CI and hospital plans. But yeah, but that spiraling a little bit again, but using those carrier reports, right? You get that information. We do have some groups that will take that information that they get from the carrier at least once a quarter and do an audit, kind of, right? You're able to pull a report from our system very easy. I used to brag that it took less than a minute, but lately when I've been running, it's less than 40 seconds that I can pull that payer report for the medical plan out of the system, right? And do a quick VLOOKUP, compare it from that bill or the carrier information to what's in our system, and make sure they're not missing an old termination or missing a new hire or things like that. Again, if you don't feel comfortable with a VLOOKUP, your CSM team is experts at them. They can help teach you. We actually have a nice little cheat sheet for them too. That was a great question that led into something that our CSM team is probably not too happy with. Right, Zach? Questions? We're available.
All right, if there are, oh, go ahead, Linz.
I don't know if Christine wants to touch on anything EDI related.
You just know my look, don't you? You can see I'm like,
I need to grab that microphone.
I guess a couple things, just going back to something that Lindsay said about ACA and being careful about your changes and things like that and how they can affect the system. You should not need to be manually updating effective dates or termination dates in the system after you've either entered an event, or if you've enrolled a new hire and you go back to the coverage screen and the effective date isn't what you think it should be. If you're finding that happening, you need to reach out to your CSM, your customer success manager, because we may have some rules either configured differently, or maybe your understanding of the eligibility doesn't match with your contract. So there's been a few cases where we've seen that the system will calculate the effective date should be 8/1, and for some reason you're thinking it should be 7/1, and you go into the coverage tab and you click the pencil and you change their effective date, and that is going to cause some issues down the road with your ACA reporting, and it also may not be within the contract of eligibility. So if you're finding yourself doing that a lot, be sure to reach out to your CSM so we can try to unravel the issue behind that in terms of why things aren't calculating the way that you think that they should be. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, just because we've seen this a little more lately and I'm not really sure why, but you should not be entering information directly into your carrier portals that you're not also entering into Celerix. We've had some issues recently where maybe changes are getting updated on the carrier side, and for whatever reason, it's not being updated in Celerix. I don't know if it's that's the job of multiple people and someone's on vacation or what might be happening. But what happens with that is if you've gone into your Anthem system and you've terminated somebody, or you've added a child, or you've done different things, and then our file goes over the next day without that updated information, our file is going to overwrite everything that you just entered manually into that carrier portal. And most of them have what they call a term by omission system, which means if they're not on our file, their coverage is getting terminated. So you just want to make sure that anything that you're doing, I mean, we understand there's those situations where you've got a newborn and you think you need to get that entered into the carrier right away because of claims. Just make sure that same information is being updated in our system so that we're not undoing things. Another area to keep in mind with that, for those of you that might have a census configuration or connection with your payroll company that's sending over to us, we don't want you going into our system and manually doing an update that hasn't already been done in payroll. We've had some situations come up like that recently where you're terminating them in our system. They haven't been terminated in payroll. And as soon as that file comes over, they're going to get rehired in our system. So any work that you've done is going to get undone by that automation. So just make sure that you have a good handle on that process. And if you're seeing that happen, reach out to us so we can explain it to you.
Katie, did you hold the bell up? Yes. Oh, that's good, because I had one more thought.
Do you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Was she coming behind me with a hook?
Yeah,
saying,
she was.
Stop talking.
You got me with the census new hires in terms.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you want to.
Last thing for those of you guys who weren't over here before, we were talking about if you have a large number of terminations or new hires that you need to add to the system. If you have like a big hiring period, specifically like school system, or maybe if manufacturing, if you acquire a new location, something like that. If you need help with that and loading large amounts of information for new hires or large amounts of terminations, then reach out to your CSM and we can assist with that and basically load all of that for you on a one-time load where, hey, all these teachers are leaving at the end of the year and they need to have their benefits termed at the end of July, then boom, we'll take care of that for you and get it all taken care of. And then in another swoop, we'll add all those new teachers that you hired this year. So if you guys need assistance with that, definitely let your CSM know and we can just let you know what we need and get it taken care of for you.
Along those same lines, salary increases, hopefully we see those. And if you do that, I have masses of those as well. Don't forget, reach out to your CSM. We simply just need employee identification, whether it's SSN or EID, and their new salary. You're going to see, if you don't put it in the email, a follow-up email come to that and say, do you want us to recalculate the LTD now based off of these? Again, let us help you out. You've heard me say it 100 times, but ask your CSM for help if you have any questions in those manners. At that time, I'm going to transition to lunch because I'm starving.
Sounds good. I'm not going to stop you guys for lunch because I'm right there with you. Okay, so this is going to transition us into our hour for lunch, our lunch sponsored by Guardian.